Hi everyone, today I want to show you how to change your treble strings for a classical or a flamenco guitar. The process is a little bit different than it is for the bass strings, so I'll break that down for you. I'm going to show you how to change two strings, the first string, which is the E string, and the third string, which is the G string. I'm not going to show you how to change the B or the second string because the winding process is exactly the same as it is for the first string. So before we get started, you do need to have a few tools available. Obviously, you need to have a set of strings available. So here are the strings that I like to use for my trebles. They're the D'Addario C, G, N 3Ts. They have a composite G string, which I really like because it balances the sound of the treble strings quite a bit. They don't sound so tubby. The G is a little bit thinner as well, so it's easier to play in my opinion. Once you get your strings out, you're gonna see they're multicolored if you get this pattern, not multicolored, but they have two colors. They have your regular nylon strings, which are your first string and second string, E and B, and then this is the composite G, which is the third string. Okay, so you've got that, and then you're going to need a string winder. Now I've got two of these. This is the one that I generally prefer. This is a D'Addario string winder that has the winder where you put the tuning peg there, or turning thing, whatever it's called, and then a little clipper to clip the end of the strings. Now, if you don't have that, you can use any one of these little cheapy winders, just wind around like this. But if you have just one of these with no cutter, then you're gonna need to get some kind of wire cutter to snip the strings. And then I also recommend a needle nose plier. These are super cheap, you can get them on Amazon. This is just to help grab the string if it's hard to grab them out, okay? Now there are tons of ways that you can restring a guitar. This is just the method that I feel is most efficient. I've been doing this for 30 years and it works super, super well. So I highly recommend doing it this way. You'll certainly find a bunch of other things out there on YouTube on how to change strings for classical and flamenco guitars. So figure out which one you like best and certainly go with that. Most of them are not wrong. What I do want to point out, I said this in my bass string video, is one important detail. So on the back end here, you want to make sure not to trap any loose ends or any ends of the strings underneath the wrappings of the other strings. It's very important because if you do have a string break, then that means you'll have to loosen the other ones in order to get the new one off, or the old one off and the new one on. So don't do that, just keep them independent. They're not gonna, if you wrap them the way I showed you, they're not gonna slip. So with that said, let's get started with the string changing. The strings I'm gonna change, just to recap, are the first, second, and third. That's E, B, and G. And what you'll notice right away is that the bass strings, they're wound just with one loop around the tie block. That's this piece right here, that's part of the whole bridge. The treble strings, you can see there are multiple wrappings or multiple loops around the tie block. The general protocol is that you want 3 wrappings or 3 loops for the first string, for the second string, and then just 2 for the third string. So I'm going to show you today again just the first and the third string because the second string is exactly the same as the first. So I'm going to go ahead and unwind the first string. You don't need to see that. Okay, I've got my first string off. You can see the hole in the tie block. This is my first string, my E string. You want to make sure that you have that one. Take that little tag off, throw that out. And now the first thing I like to do is take the end of this, just like I did the bass strings if you saw my other video, and just give it a little tiny bend so that it kind of bends upward like that. If you can see that maybe against the block like that. And then you can string it from the hole side, from the sound hole side to the back of the guitar side. So this here, I'm gonna give it a little bit of slack. I'm gonna bring it underneath the string and behind it, right? And then I'm gonna wrap it underneath. I'm gonna go under one loop, bring it up, 2 loops, bring it up, 3 loops, and then with that end, I'm gonna take that loose end here and I'm going to pin it down. I'm gonna pull here a little bit, pull this way, and I'm gonna pin this end down against the top. Then I'm gonna pull. Okay, so you might get a little loose end like that. Just pull that tight. This is where you might want the needle nose pliers if you need them, but you just need to pull that. Okay, so now that is very secure. That is not coming out at all. So now I'm going to go over to the headstock. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so we're at the headstock. You can see the little hole in the headstock here. So I'm just going to take the end and I'm going to just feed it right downward through the hole here. Grab the other end. Make sure that the string sits neatly in the slot for the nut. This part is called, the white part is called the nut. And I just press down a little bit so it doesn't loosen up. Then I'm going to bring the other end underneath. This is a little bit of precision work here. Right, it's underneath, and then I'll pull it. It's behind the string, pull it toward me a little bit. This is pretty loose. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm gonna go underneath once, twice, and 3 times. Right, so now I've got that wrapping there, and I like to just wrap the string around my finger like this, pull, I'm gonna pull upward, and then I'm gonna take my winding peg, see if I can get that in there, and wind while I'm pulling up a little bit, and I'm gonna wind until those loops are behind the tuning peg, the tuning spool, okay? So that's it. Once it's behind, the string is secure. I do want to make sure that the string winding, it's hard to see in the camera, can't really see it too well, but the string is wound right up against itself. It's not super spread out. So once it's wound, now I'm going to tune the guitar. So the tuning is very simple. I'm just going to tune my first string to my second string, which I haven't taken off yet. You can use a tuner, of course. You can see that's very low. So it's pretty close to in tune. Now it's in tune. Now the treble strings will come out of tune quite a bit. They take a lot longer to tune up. So I recommend always, in general, if you're going to change your strings and you have patience, just do it at the top of your practice session. It's a little annoying to have to tune during the practice session, but by the end of it, you'll be pretty close to having your strings settled. You can see that was already in tune, but I got to tune it up again. So be patient. Treble strings usually take about 2 to 3 days to settle, as long as you're tuning them constantly. So there it goes again. So once they're in tune, now I'm going to cut off those frayed ends, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to take my wire cutters, or you can use, if you've got this winder with the cutters, you can just grab the end here and leave about 1/4 inch or so, right, of the string. You can see I left about 1/4 inch roughly. The important thing is to make sure that the end of the string does not touch the top of the guitar. If it does touch the top and you're playing, it'll buzz and it'll drive you nuts. So we'll cut off that end, and then we'll cut off the end on the other side as well. So here is the other extra string on this end. So I'm going to cut that, and same thing, I'm just going to leave about 1/4 inch roughly, and then just toss that in the garbage. And that's it. So the next thing that you need to do is, when you change your next string, for me it would be the B string normally. Today I'm going to change just the G, because I want to show you the slightly different winding here, which is 2 wrappings instead of 3. But if I change the B string, when I change that, then I would retune the E. So every time I add a new string, I tune the one that I previously put on. Okay, so let's check out the G next. By the way, this is an important point I forgot to mention. When you are turning your tuning pegs, you want to turn counterclockwise to tune and clockwise to untune, right, to loosen up. That's very important. You want to make sure to be consistent with that. The other thing that I want to show you is the order of the strings on the guitar on the tuning head, on the machine head headstock, to make sure that you have the right order. So here are the order of the strings. If you have the guitar in playing position, the top one closest to you is the 6th string. Then you've got the 5th string, the 4th string, the D. Then you just kind of go right around in order, counterclockwise. The G, 3rd string. Second one is the B, 2nd string. And then the one down and closest to you is the E, or the 1st string. So make sure that you tune them in that order. Once again, it's counterclockwise to tune up, clockwise to untune, okay? Okay, I've taken off the G string, and I'm gonna put the new one on. This is, again, the composite G string. You can, is that upside down? G, 3, 3rd string, okay? So this string is a little bit tighter. It's the tightest of the treble strings. So we only really need 2 windings. 3 is gonna be too much. I do the same thing that I did for the first one. I'm gonna bend the tip a little bit so that it faces upward. You can see that, oops. Faces upward a little bit, right? See that bend? And I'm gonna put it in through from the sound hole side. Let's get rid of that other end for now so it doesn't get in the way, right? And I'm gonna do the same exact thing I did before. I'm gonna give this a little slack. I'm gonna push this away from me, come underneath. That's how I need a little more slack for this. And I'm gonna, right underneath it, then I'm gonna wrap once and only twice. Now that loose end, I'm gonna pull here, pull from my left hand, pull, pull, pull. I'm gonna pull this side as well and trap this underneath. I'm gonna pull that pretty tight, right? So I press this down against the top, pull this, right? You don't wanna over pull, you don't wanna break anything. But that is going to be a nice, solid, and secure loop here. Just 2 wrappings around this, right? Okay. So then I'm going to take the other end and I'm going to go to the headstock and do the same thing. Okay, so I've got my other end. I'm ready to put the G, the string here, the loose end, into the tuning spool hole on the G there. So I'm going to place this down, and I'm just going to take this end and I'm going to feed it through. You can't really see this in the camera. It's hard for me to hold this, but feed it straight down. And then just like I did for the first string, I want to make sure that it's pretty much in the slot there. I'm going to bring it up underneath, behind the string, so on my side of the string, bring it up, and then I'm going to loop it twice. So one, twice, just 2 times, pull that a little bit, wrap this end around my finger, just like I did the other one, so that I have some leverage here. And then I'm going to take a winder, and I'm going to wind that up. Okay, so what you're going to see here is that before you are able to get the wrapping around to the back side of the spool, the G is going to be pretty in tune quite a bit. So you have to wait for a little bit, just give it some time. All right, maybe play it a little bit until that starts to go down, and then you're going to need to wind again. It's close, it's not quite there. All right, so see how it's in tune now? So it's in tune, I'm not quite behind that. So now it's way too high, but I'm right on top. So the little wrapping that I did is right on top of the spool, but it's still just slightly behind it. So I'm gonna wait for a little bit. Right, I'm gonna wait until that goes down so that I don't snap the string. And I'm gonna just get that right behind so that it is very secure. And it is. So that's it. So now my next step, once again, is to tune the guitar. But in this case, because my G is already higher, I need to wait on that one. So let me show you what I do there. Okay, now I've got my E string, my first string, and my G string, my third string, already on the guitar. Remember, the B was already there. I haven't changed that one yet for the purposes of this video, but I will later on today. So I want to tune. So the first thing I want to do is I can reference my B because that was already there. And I'm going to go to my 5th fret. Right, so again, you can use a tuner, otherwise it's 5th fret. And then for my G, I want to go to my 4th fret on the 3rd string and reference that against my 2nd string. So there you can see it's already gone down a little bit, even though it was a little bit higher in tune. So I'm going to pull that, and then I'm going to just give it a little partial quarter turn. You can see it really tunes pretty quickly now. Okay, now in general, I would avoid stretching the strings, pulling them to get them in tune. Just be patient with it. It does take a while. Let them stretch out naturally. If you pull too much, you can damage the string, basically give it a shorter lifespan. If it's an emergency and you're performing and the string breaks, then by all means, go ahead and pull it into tune so you stretch it out faster. But if you don't need to hurry, don't do that, so that way your strings will last longer. In this case, you can see that already went down a little bit more. I don't need to stretch that. So I'll keep doing that. And of course, as I add a new string, I'll retune the strings that I previously added. Now, once you have your strings on there, you tune the strings and you start to play. Of course, you want to make sure that you're producing the best tone that you can possibly produce. So to find out how to make sure that your tone is spot on for both classical and flamenco guitar, then definitely check out the next video on the screen. See you there.